Buckle up, boys, girls, and others, because it's that time of year, once again, where we reflect on the last 12 months in video gaming and shine a light on the most abhorrent offerings. In fairness, 2022 hasn't been a terrible time to be a gamer, as the likes of Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, and Horizon Forbidden West have kept us entertained all year round. Still, 2022 has had its fair share of utter tosh, and so we're here to parade the most awful examples in front of you like a 19th century freak show. Point and laugh at the terrible games, children. They enjoy it really. As ever, we have rules for these sorts of lists. A game can only be considered amongst the worst of 2022 if it received a minimum of 7 professional reviews and was released in at least one territory in that year. We get our review scores from Metacritic, so if you don't agree with our list, take it up with them. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and here are the 10 worst games of 2022. Number 10. Dragon Ball: The Breakers, 53%. You know how when moths see a bright light, they just can't help but bonk their heads onto it full pelt? I'm starting to think that the Dragon Ball franchise is a bit like that, only rather than throwing themselves at a particularly luminous bulb, they launch themselves time and time again into bad game land. Dragon Ball: The Breakers is the latest disappointing game to bear the good name of Dragon Ball, and although it isn't the absolute worst title in the series, that accolade sits firmly with 2003's Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Battle 22, it's still a pretty poor showing. Gameplay-wise, The Breakers is somewhat similar to the likes of Dead by Daylight. 7 ordinary citizens find themselves stuck in a temporal seam, and their only hope for survival is to break out using a time machine. They're not alone in there, however, as they share their prison with a raider that's out to get them. The main issue with Breakers is the fact that it tries to do something that so many other games have already done, but fails to bring anything new to the table or even do the bare minimum competently. Number 9. The Last Oricrew, 53%. If the key to making a good game was nailing the premise, then The Last Oricrew would probably have appeared on our Best of 2022 list. Alas, it takes more than a cool-sounding idea to make a game worth playing. Released in October 2022, The Last Oricrew tells the story of Silver, an immortal warrior who has crash-landed on the planet Wardenia and is drawn into an ongoing conflict between 2 warring factions. Allegedly inspired by Dark Souls, The Last Oricrew puts a slight twist on the classic sword and sorcery formula by adding a number of sci-fi elements into the mix. On paper, this game sounds great, and it does have some okay graphics, half-decent voice acting, and satisfying combat, but ultimately, it has too many shortcomings to recommend. The story, despite a reasonable-sounding premise, is quite bland, the characters aren't all that interesting, enemy AI is dumb as a brick, and the medieval and sci-fi stylings always seem to be at odds with one another. If you're the sort of person that feels the need to play absolutely everything that calls itself Soulsborne, then you might get something out of The Last Oricrew. For everyone else though, this one is best avoided. Number 8. Blade Runner Enhanced Edition, 52%. Now, don't get us wrong, we're all for re-releasing older titles for new hardware, but if you're going to do it, at least have the decency to do it well. Blade Runner was originally released in 1997 for PC and was a decent little point-and-click adventure set in the same universe as both the 1982 Ridley Scott film and the 1968 Philip K. Dick novel. Though many of the film's characters made appearances in the game, the protagonist was new face Ray McCoy, a detective tasked with hunting down a group of dangerous replicants. Blade Runner Enhanced Edition is much the same, but with updated character models, animations, and cutscenes, as well as support for modern systems. Sadly, it would seem that time has not been kind to Blade Runner, as many of the original's problems seem even worse in the harsh light of 2022. According to most critics, everything that made the original great is still there, but so are its problems, including issues with the pacing and obtuse gameplay. Additionally, the graphical updates are practically non-existent. There is no hint system, and the interface has, for reasons unknown, been made worse. Perhaps this is one retro title that should have remained firmly in the past. Number 7. The Waylanders, 51%. The problem with trying to break into the RPG market these days is that it's super oversaturated, so if you're going to succeed, you need to be one of 2 things. 1, an already established IP, or B, really good. Unfortunately, The Waylanders is neither. This PC exclusive was released into early access in June 2020, but didn't get its full release until February 2022. According to The Waylanders Metacritic blurb, it comes to players from some of the top talents who brought well-known titles within the genre like Dragon Age, Mass Effect, or Pillars of Eternity sagas. Whilst we don't doubt that those involved in the development of The Waylanders did play a part in the aforementioned titles, we can only assume they weren't the key to their success. The Waylanders draws heavily from Celtic mythology and tasks the player with journeying across the land, finding the cause of the spreading corruption and returning the world to peace. In terms of things like its visuals and gameplay, The Waylanders isn't bad. Regrettably though, at release it was absolutely plagued by bugs and glitches to the point where many found it unplayable. If the devs can resolve this title's myriad technical issues, then there's a good game in there, but as it stands, it's not worth bothering with. Number 6. Zorro the Chronicles, 49%. Well gang, we've ventured past the 50% mark, so you know what that means. That's right, we've officially left Mediocreville and have taken a sharp turn into Crud Town. Keep those doors locked and them windows rolled up. Now, it's probably worth noting that Zorro the Chronicles is a video game that's aimed at children, and therefore it can't be judged too harshly for not presenting us adults with much of a challenge. All other aspects of the title, however, are fair game. Based on the animated series of the same name, Zorro the Chronicles tasks players with dealing out some swift justice as either the titular masked hero or his sister Inez. Despite nailing the show's cheeky humor, Zorro the Chronicles falls somewhat flat. The gameplay is repetitive, the visuals are uninspired, the camera seems to be working against players at every turn. Small children who don't know any better might be able to look past all of this, but as small adults, we cannot. Somewhat terrifyingly, one publication awarded Zorro the Chronicles a score of 80 out of 100, which leaves us to question which particular substances their journalist had been ingesting that day to put them in such a forgiving mood. And also, if you find out, let me know, I'd like some. Number 5. Lego Brawls, 46%. Generally speaking, if a video game has the word LEGO plastered all over it, it can be counted upon to be half decent. In fact, of the 19 pages of LEGO titles with review scores on Metacritic, only 4 games have an angry red square next to them, which makes LEGO Brawls part of a very exclusive, if somewhat unsavory, club. LEGO Brawls was originally released for iOS and iMac in 2019 before making its way to PC, Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Series X/S in September 2022. See, there's your problem. You've tried putting a mobile game onto consoles, silly billies. This platform fighter immediately drew comparison to the Super Smash Bros. Series, none of it favourable. Yeah, it has a cute little character creator that allows players to build over 77 billion different minifigures, but aside from that, there is little fun to be had. The gameplay consists of nothing more than button mashing, matches go on for far too long, and it's incredibly difficult to tell what's happening on screen. If you're looking for LEGO action from 2022, stick with LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, and if you're in desperate need of a platform fighter, dust off that copy of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Trust me, you'll be much better off. Number 4. Xel, 43%. There are a great number of aesthetically pleasing games out there. Titles like Gone Home, Ori and the Blind Forest, and What Remains of Edith Finch are all very nice to look at, whilst being brilliant video games at the same time. Clearly, this is where the developers of Xel, if that is how you pronounce it, have gone wrong because they've nailed the presentation but have failed just about everywhere else. Xel, I don't want to say that anymore, please don't make me say that anymore, tells the story of Reed, a pilot who crash lands on a strange planet, losing all of her memories in the process. Over the course of the game, players explore the planet, encounter humans and robots, and try to find a way to repair their ship. Although Xel is very clearly trying to imitate the Legend of Zelda series, it fails to hit the mark. Its main shortcomings are technical ones, and several reviewers noted that the game's frame rate frequently drops to an unacceptable level, textures fail to load, and bits of the map will pop in seemingly as and when they feel like it. It's also filled to the brim with bugs and glitches. It's a real shame really, because with a bit more love and attention, Xel could have been a neat little action adventure, but as is, it's really not worth anyone's time. Number 3. Babylon's Fall, 41%. Over the years, developer Platinum Games has given the world some fantastic titles, including the likes of Nier Automata, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, and Mad World. Hell, they even gave us a great game the same year as this one in the form of Bayonetta 3, so we're not really sure where it all went wrong for Babylon's Fall. We can only assume they were too distracted by that whole voice actor debacle to put any real effort into their PlayStation and PC exclusive RPG. Babylon's Fall is a title of the action, role-playing, and hack-and-slash persuasions, and sees players taking on the role of a sentinel who must fight their way up a massive tower. Although some outlets praised the game's slick combat, there wasn't much else that critics could find to be positive about. The gameplay itself is repetitive and boring, progression is confusing, and the visuals are murky and lackluster. Not only was Babylon's Fall a critical failure, it was also a commercial flop too, with fewer than 1,200 players gracing its servers on launch day. As such, publisher Square Enix announced in September that the game's servers will be shut down in February 2023 for good. RIP Babylon's Fall, I suppose. Number 2. Crossfire X, 38%. Like the RPG market, the first-person shooter market is also quite saturated, and it's probably fair to say that no matter what your preferred flavor of FPS, be it military, sci-fi, multiplayer, or other, there's already something out there for you. With the genre very much dominated by the likes of the Call of Duty and Halo series, you've really got to be something special to stand out. Crossfire X for the Xbox One and Series is not special. Released in February 2022, this first-person shooter has both a single-player campaign and a multiplayer mode, the latter of which is free to play. I think most who have played it, though, would agree that even free is a bit too expensive. Every aspect of the game feels outdated and derivative. The single-player campaign is hugely generic, not to mention technically inept, with an unruly camera and unresponsive controls that constantly work against the player. The multiplayer isn't much better either, and kind of feels like what you'd end up with if you ordered Counter-Strike Global Offensive off Wish. Publisher Smilegate has at least acknowledged the problems with Crossfire X and has assured players that they will work to improve the game. Whether it will ever end up being worth playing, though, is anyone's guess. Number 1. Postal 4 No Regrets, 30%. Here at Team TripleJump, we like to look at the silver lining in every scenario. The glimmer of hope to be found in this particular sorry mess is that Postal 4 No Regrets isn't the worst game ever made, and had it been released in a different year, it might not have even been bad enough to make it onto one of these lists. Alas, Postal 4 was released in 2022, a year better than many, and therefore it shall not go unchastised. Postal 4 No Regrets, and yes, that subtitle is a nod to a meme that's damn near as old as I am, was released on April the 20th, 2022, Blaze It, and is described by the developer as being the true sequel to Postal 2, on account of the fact that Postal 3 was so bad. In case you're wondering, Postal 3 was only the second worst game of 2011. Like its predecessor, Postal 4 is poorly written, relies too heavily on shock value, and is full of bugs. One publication did say that the series fanbase would probably enjoy the game, but let's face it, if you're a fan of Postal, you're probably the sort of person that laughs at dead baby jokes, and as such, your opinion can't be trusted. So well done, Postal 4. Admittedly, you are better than your predecessor, though not by any degree worthy of recognition.